So I was just amazed with the meditation and the prayer work and the words of truth that Raymont speaks that wash over me and remind me of who I am. So I'm delighted to introduce our senior minister, Reverend Raymont Anderson. He brings to us a wonderful perspective on science and mind teaching with his own personal experiences, allowing us to open up to our deeper personal experiences and what it means to be part of a diverse, inclusive community. Reverend Raymont challenged us to walk the walk, to connect our mind, hearts, thoughts, and emotions that elevate our consciousness and advance the oneness consciousness in this community and on the planet right now. It is my delight to introduce Reverend Raymont.
I feel like that's a lot. I feel like there's pressure now.
It's a little too personal.
What'd you say, Doug?
It's a little too personal.
Leave me alone. You're messing with me too much. So how is everyone today? Oh, you've been practicing. That's impressive. I couldn't resist. So, for one, it's like a magic wand, and we were talking about Harry Potter, so I haven't been here in a while. I've been going through a lot of stuff as of lately. And I don't mean like going through stuff like, I mean like experiencing a lot of stuff. So for those who follow me on Facebook or whatnot, you know that recently I was at the Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta, spoke there, did a workshop there, and Tracy and I were there long enough that one of the board members took us around Atlanta, so we got to see like the aquarium and a bunch of things. And one of the places we went was Ebenezer Baptist Church, and we went to the tomb of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, and we saw a lot of stuff. So there's that. Then last Saturday, Tracy and I went to the Pride Parade in Baltimore. Was that last Saturday? Last Saturday we went to Pride Parade in Baltimore. So it was my first time there. So there's all of that. Then there's all the things that CSL is currently doing. Recently, this past week, for those of you who may not know, there were 3 webinars that were done Monday and Tuesday regarding the LGBTQ2IA plus community, and then Wednesday regarding Juneteenth. So there's a lot of stuff going on around this whole idea of how God shows up. And in the midst of it all, there are a lot of things going on that would challenge us. Like, there are children without basic hygiene products, sleeping on concrete floors. Yet another transgender female was murdered. Yet wars and rumors of wars and stuff. There's a lot going on. A lot. And today, what we're supposed to be talking about is, like the theme for the month is, the topic, different worldviews, what to do. The title for the general outline was A Challenge to an Ethos, which, just when I read that, my first thought was Three Musketeers. Ethos, Porthos, Ethos, never mind. Some of y'all get a joke. But my particular title for today was Can't We All Get Along? Anybody know who is sort of famous for having said that?
Rodney King.
Rodney King. There are many of us who may not remember, but this idea, and I'm not talking about any of the things that happened, I'm talking about his question. Can we all Seems like a very basic question. Can we all get along? In CSL, one of the things we talk about is a world that works for who? For everyone. The world that works for everyone. That's one of a vision. Like, that's massive. A world that works for everyone. And I've spoken to many people in our movement, and even spoken to people outside of our movement about what we do in CSL. And I've shared with them the vision of CSL. A world that works for everyone. And their response is, you're stupid. That's not possible. And I understand where they're coming from. I understand. But I'm reminded that there was this guy who was imprisoned for a lot of years under a system of segregation that when he got out, not only did he forgive those who imprisoned him, but he became the president of that nation. And this man's name was? Nelson Mandela. Now, how does someone go from fighting racism in a system that is so barbaric and is imprisoned for years in a tiny little concrete cell? Because prison over there isn't like prison here. Like when one of my brothers went to jail and showed me photos of his prison cell, I'm like, you have cable. You have
photos.
You have cable in your jail cell. Oh, maybe I need to go sell drugs then. I don't have cable. But in his cell, concrete and cold and nothing. And despite all of that, he gets out and is asked, well, why aren't you angry? Why aren't you filled with hate? It's not going to serve anything. It doesn't do any good. So he had to let it go. And then became president. So can we all get along? There was a time, we've mentioned this month we are celebrating and honoring Pride Month. And 50 years ago, there was a riot in New York City in Greenwich Village based upon that entire premise of the police were constantly harassing the members of the LGBTQ community. And at that time, there were all those letters didn't exist then, technically. And at one point, the folks were like, look, we didn't had enough of you bursting into the bars and clubs and arresting us. And so they stood up and said, enough is enough. And now here we are today where years ago, wearing such as this could have gotten me arrested or beaten. Well, and there are places today in our country where it still will. But can we all get along? And part of that question comes down to we have to understand that each of us may be part of the problem. And when I say that, what I mean is there are so many things in our culture that train us to be us versus them. Tic-tac-toe. There's a winner and a loser. One has to be an X, the other has to be an O. Chess, a game of strategy. One has to be whatever, typically black, one has to be white. And I say that because now there's a Game of Thrones version where there are White Walkers in there, and then you got the Wizard of Oz version, like there's Star Wars, like there. So it's not just black and white anymore. There's Klingons and the Federation. Football, baseball, like everything in our culture is about us versus them. It's a dog-eat-dog society. You got to get them before they get you. Like in business, we are taught to compete. You better go for that promotion before somebody else gets it. It's cutthroat. So like it's in the very fabric of our culture. The soil of America is still wet with the blood of the Native American, indigenous Americans who owned the land that wasn't lost that had their land taken. The very fabric of the country is built on take and subjugate because we are entitled and you are not. People were brought from another continent to serve here because you don't matter. You're not really human. The Bible says that we can enslave you, so get over here and pick my cotton. What? You tried to run away? Hang from that tree. The very fabric of the country is built on us versus them. So if we don't, as a spiritual philosophy, get to the nuts and bolts of where in us, because science of mind teaches about self-accountability. Because even when we pray, is there anyone in here not familiar with the type of prayer we do in CSL, religious science? It's called affirmative prayer or spiritual mind treatment. Is there anybody in here not familiar with? Okay, so everybody is. Okay, so then you understand that when we do a treatment, I'm not praying for Robert. I'm not praying for Sue. I am establishing in my consciousness the truth about them. And knowing that there is only one mind, that mind is God's mind, then that mind is my mind now, and that mind is their mind now, then the truth I know in this one mind must be the truth that is then known in their one mind. So we're not even praying us and them. We don't see sickness or sin in the same way others do. We don't classify or judge the way. And yet, as individuals, there are many things we do judge. There are many things that we don't like and we fuss and we cuss. We stomp our feet. Shake our fist at the heavens. But if we're going to really get grounded in what this philosophy is, then the responsibility comes to me. Where in me do I judge or see other? Where in me do I allow that judgment of other to cause friction to where I don't want to speak or be around them? As humans, we're going to have that. We're going to have things. But we have an option to be like an oyster. That when that grain of sand slips in and it's rubbing skin raw, it's like, We have an option to surround that grain of sand with enough love that turns it into a pearl. Rather than try to kick the sand out, rather than try to, no, I'm fine. Rather than try to deny it or dismiss it or ignore it or pray it away, embrace it. It's there for a reason. Everything that shows up in our lives, everything, and everyone. Because I'm sure if I ask you right now, and I'm not, so, but if I were to ask you, bring to your mind someone that you don't like. Whether it's someone you personally know, someone you're related to, someone you're married to, someone you're friends with, someone you see on television. I don't care who it is. If there's something about that person that you're, just the idea of them causes something to boil up in you, bubble up in you, rise up in you, agitate you, then that is the invitation to bring spiritual practices and spiritual principles to that thing, because it's only there to bother you because there's something that is yours to do around it. So, can we get along? I can't get along with Robert if I can't get along with me. You know, there's a phrase, do unto others, which plain and simply means treat other people the way you want to be treated. But what if I'm used to being abused? You know, we often say that, you know, the way that you are walking through life, you are teaching other people how to treat you. But what if the way I'm treating me is the exact reason why so many things are showing up in my periphery? Because I don't value me. I don't love me. I don't appreciate me. I don't see my intrinsic worth. I can't. It's not possible. Since the day I was born, I was told and I was taught and I learned, and then I had to closet, and then had to deny, and then had to, and then had to, and then after that had to, and then because of that had to go do this, and then buy this, and do this, and do this, and everything is about lump after lump, and cover, and hide, and hide, and hide, until you have put on so many masks that you can take off 10 or 15 and is that the real? No, there's another. No, there's another. We have hidden ourselves and denied ourselves so much that how can we really say, treat other people the way you want to be treated when you don't know how to treat yourself? How many of us, if we were to really, and I mean really go there, how many of us are excellent demonstrations of self-love? That we demonstrate how to take care of ourselves. That no one on the outside looking in would dare to say, oh, you know, I can tell Ray hates himself because of how he hurts himself. Ray Anderson. I want to specify, because we got 2 Rays in the house. If someone on the outside can witness that we are harming ourselves in thought, word, or deed, then how can I really treat him? Not just the way I want to be treated, because that's a little selfish, but it's fine. But I'm going to treat him the way he deserves to be treated. Simply because I know what I am. I know what he is. Namaste. That which God is as me, sees, recognizes, acknowledges, loves itself as you. Because there's only one. If we're not doing the self-work to get there, then that question, can we get along? It's a moot point. There is no point in even entertaining or asking the question. And I don't know if you like me, my grandmother, she would say, you know, when going to the restroom as a child, you either or get off the pot.
Exactly.
One or the other. You aren't there to build a castle. You're there to do your business and then move on. But what if, can we get along? Because the idea, get along. Did you know that one way in the etymology of and phraseology of get along means to move on? So let me see where it is, because I got 11 pages of notes, and you know, Ray, 11 pages of notes. Theodore was like, "Have you lost your mind?" Don't interpret that. Okay, so get along, to relate well with other people or a situation in a successful way. Right? But it's also, as in a spoken phrase, telling someone to leave a place. You better get along now. Get along, little dog. So what if part of how we get along is based upon what we are ready to leave? Like we have to be willing to leave the idea of us versus them. to really come together as one. We have to leave the idea of it's a rat race and it's all about competition in order to really build relationship. What if we have to leave all of that old muck and bleh of that consciousness? What if we have to leave it? Put the baggage down and leave it and get along. Get moving. Get shifting. Get elevating. Get evolving so that we see no one as an enemy. And what I mean by that is, even when, because this is challenging, even when someone, because every time Tracy and I have gone to Pride, and I shouldn't say every time, a couple of times Tracy and I have gone to Pride in New York, there's someone off on the outskirts, screaming out the F word or some other derogatory term. And part of me has always wanted to have the fortitude that if someone, like I told you about the N-word incident, that if someone walked to me, then I would be able, as a skilled martial artist, to compassionately introduce them to the pavement. Because see, there's a difference. I'm saying this in all honesty, because I didn't understand that when I started martial arts. It was just about punch, kick, hurt, like the old Karate Kid thing. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy. That's what Cobra Kai teacher taught them. Until Miyagi was like, no, karate about the peace of mind. That is what karate about. And Daniel's like, oh, hey, okay, I got you. But then he developed it, he understood. So in Aikido, there's this idea that it's the art of peace. And so when someone attacks, you redirect. But you are not trying to harm them. You're not trying to hurt them. It's because you understand as a loving being of light that so are they. Even in the martial arts, I learned this. So for me, it's whatever comes before me, can I do whatever is mine to do, even if that means, but I do so without animosity, without venom, without hate. Because they're not an enemy. They're someone who is right now acting out of a place of ignorance. And so in the same way that Nelson Mandela stepped out and said, I cannot bring that anger and hatred with me. In the same way, can I move forward hate-free? And not just hate-free, because in order to be hate-free, there has to be hate. Got that? In order to be hate-free, I have to still have hate come out of my mouth or out of my mind. So what is the opposite of being hate-free? Be more of that. Love-filled, compassionate-filled, so full that I do not see an enemy. Because the enemy, and I may have mentioned this a couple of weeks ago or a couple months ago, or may have heard me say this before, and I don't care, I'm going to say it again. There's an African proverb that says, when there is no enemy within, there is no enemy without. And some say, when there is no enemy within, then the enemy outside can do you no harm. When you have no enemy within, then there is no enemy that can present themselves to you, etc., etc., however you phrase it. But the idea is there something in me that has animosity towards me? Do I criticize my weight? Because I gained, now for those who know my story, 2012, I was up to 305 pounds, right? Got rid of it, shifted it, gone. Got to my target weight. And then as of recently, for a variety of reasons, gained 10 pounds. So right now I'm at 181-ish. And the inclination is to criticize. Dude, what are you doing? How did you do all that work? Tracy went to the gym 3 days. Why didn't you? Lazy? Oh, but you're going to cut another piece of pie. You're going to cut another piece of pie and some ice cream. I'm leaving. I'm going downstairs. You should be ashamed of yourself. That is so easy. So easy to slip into the neighborhood of criticism. But when we do that, we're lumping more onto ourselves to be shamed and guiltful for, rather than being free of it. Until we can get to that place inside ourselves where we are free in and of ourselves, can we get along? Just stop asking it. Can we create a world that works for us? Just stop asking it. Stop envisioning it. Because we're not making this a life that works for me. And if I'm not doing the work that makes this a life that works for me, then how do I make this a friendship that works for us? How do I make this a community that works for us? How do I make this community demonstrate it's not possible if I'm not doing my work? Like I said before, no, I am not my brother's keeper. I am my brother. No, I am not my sister's keeper. I am my sister. So that every time I hear about another transgender woman of color being murdered, my heart hurts. I don't know her, but I know that pain. Every time I hear about these kids not having basic hygiene related, my heart hurts. And so I have to ask myself, then what is yours to do? Because praying, great, but what do we say in this movement? Treat and
Move your feet.
So I've already written the ACLU. I've already written a couple of mayors. Like, this is where I am in Maryland, and I know you're in Texas. What can I do? What can my community do? Can we buy toothbrushes and send them? If this is what's blocking it, can we provide it so they have it? What do we need to do? How can I be of service? Do I need to get on a plane and come down there? Just tell me what you need of me so I may avail myself. Because if we are not willing to roll the sleeves up and do whatever is ours to do, pack it up.
Amen.
Ernest Holmes says, if we are in this philosophy and we are not seeing results, then the philosophy is useless.
That's right. Back it
But
up.
the results start in ourselves first. We have to be demonstrating. We have to get to a point where we understand. Any Bible scholars in the room? Don't raise your hand because I know you are. Other than. So Matthew 25:35. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you visited me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger? Because keep in mind these words, foreign, foreigner, strange, stranger. When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And Yeshua replied, truly I tell you, whatever you did for the least of these, my brothers, you have done to and for me. Right now, we have people suffering, and no one is advocating for them. Dying, and no one is advocating for them. And yet we have this philosophy that we know changes lives. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that were it not for this philosophy, I would not be who I am today. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. From the person I was who hated himself, who criticized himself regularly, who had suicidal ideations, on and on and on and on. And now I know that even when some of the shadow of any of that resurfaces, there's this thing called truth that I can apply to it. Each and every one of us has to get to a point where we understand, and actually, can you look forward?
Where?
That. We have to understand that that thing exists right now in all of us. And so when Tracy and I when we were in Atlanta, like I said, we went to the tomb of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott. And right across from the tomb, there burns an eternal flame. And the eternal flame is that reminder, and what it says, symbolizes the continuing efforts to realize Dr. King's ideals for the beloved community, which requires lasting personal commitment that cannot weaken when faced with obstacles. We are being invited right here and right now to find whatever place within us we have let that flame die down. Or we have let that flame become so small that it's barely perceptible, but understand that that which God is can never be extinguished. So no matter how small that flame may go, it can never go out. So our invitation is, then how do we stoke the fires? How do we bring it back? How do we understand personally, with awareness and practice, that says, Sue said something the other day that I don't agree with. But because of this teaching, because of these principles, I am going to sit down with her and have discussion. Because if we do not enter into the ability to discuss with those who we perceive as having contrary beliefs, whoever they are, whether that's politicians, whether that's spiritual leaders, I don't care who it is. If we see them as other, then the conversation is done. But can we engage in conversation with people that we know do not agree with us? People we know do not like us for whatever reason. Can we sit at the same table? I know you know about the guy who, jazz musician who made it his job to now collect robes of the Klan and become their friends.
Wow.
Ain't something that I've chosen to do,
That's his to do.
but it's his to do.
Yes, it is.
And so I applaud and honor and recognize not just that that's his to do, but that he is demonstrating that it's possible. He is demonstrating that it's possible to go from someone who was a police chief or something in the Baltimore Police Department, who was the Grand Dragon of the KKK, went to jail and became friends with this African American man, gave him his robes as a demonstration of, I'm done with this life. And now they're friends who regularly get together for tea and coffee and stuff.
Wow.
He's gone from, nigger, you should hang in a tree, to this black man is my brother.
Amen.
He's demonstrating that it's possible. And he's not even in this philosophy. But what we know is that these principles apply to everything and everyone. That which is in mind, as a man, as a woman, as a person thinks, so shall they be. Not so they will do, not so they become. You be what you think. Your feelings demonstrate. So can we all get along? It's a question each and every one of us has to ask for ourselves. Can I get along with my fellow practitioners? Can I get along with my sister? Depends on what day of the week it is. Can I get along? Am I willing to entertain the idea? Am I willing to entertain the idea of getting along, of demonstrating peace? First in my own life, then in my home, in my community, and in the world. Let's pray. Simply anchoring in this moment to this truth, God in me, as me, is me. And knowing that that which God is all there is, that there is nothing that can stand in opposition to this power and this presence, then I surrender in this moment to this that I know is the one life, living itself as me, the one mind, thinking itself through me. And that what is true for me in these words is true for everyone in this room. God in as is. And so as I anchor to this truth, as I apply these principles and this awareness to my regular everyday life, I understand that my regular everyday life becomes divine simply by bringing the divine awareness to it. So that in so doing, there is no simply washing the dishes, but that it's the divine washing the dishes. It is the divine going to the gym. It is the divine cutting and eating this slice of pie. It is God acting in, through, and as. There is only one life. That life is God's life. That life is filled with joy and power and presence and peace and wisdom, intelligence, creativity, and that life is my life right now. And as I said, what is true for me is true for everyone in this room. That life, your life, right now. And so in gratitude, I speak these words and recognize and witness this power and this presence showing up as the many faces, as the many lives, as the many threads of the tapestry that is showing up as CSL Greater Baltimore. Knowing that this coat of many colors, this quilt of many pieces, is an infinite creation that cloaks and warms and comforts this beloved community to such a degree that we go out into the world with this power, this presence, this warmth, this tenderness, this teaching, this love, and this eternal flame to shine this light, because that is what is ours to do. Surrendered because it is done. Surrendered because it is already activated in the mind of God, therefore it already is. And knowing this, we affirm it, we declare it by saying together, and so it is. Amen.